A lot of things has happened in the world in the past few months. The American people is experiencing record high inflation domestically in 4 decades, while they have no way to prevent the Biden administration pumping tens of billions of dollars into the Ukraine war instead of helping people in need in the US. According to the CNBC report, gross domestic product in the US declined at a 1.4% pace in the first quarter of 2022, below analyst expectation of 1% gain. Declines in fixed investment, defense spending, and a record trade imbalance weighed on US economy growth. Consumer expenditure rose 2.7%, but inside the inflation rate of 7.8%, which means American people is buying less in the tough time. Numbers doesn't treat. The US economy is very likely falling into recession, even though some experts claim this is only noise. With the escalation of war and the depletion of Ukraine army in the Donbass region, US and NATO joining the war is just a matter of time. The NATO has already trained many Ukrainian army to use the NATO weapon systems and lifted many obstacles for the Ukraine army to share the NATO intelligence. As Defense Secretary Austin made it clear, US hopes the war in Ukraine will result in a weakened Russia. In a closely interconnected global economy, is this target realistic without hurting US itself and its allies? US economy is not doing great domestically. Abroad, we are seeing a series of signs that the US influence is dwindling. To understand, we need to look at the latest development in the world stage. There are three very typical signs, which happened in the Middle East, Europe, and Southeast Asia. The first sign happens in Middle East. Leaders in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates refuse to pick up the phone call when President Joe Biden calls. According to the Wall Street Journal, the journal reported that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and King of the United Arab Emirates have declined recent White House requests to speak with Biden. The calls were part of the Biden's effort to rally support for Ukraine and to try to head off oil price spikes in US. The US gas price have skyrocketed to record highs after Biden announced a ban on Russian oil imports. Now, filling a full tank of gas for an economic-sized car in the gas station will cost me more than $100. Both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are part of OPEC, which supplies more than 11% of US oil imports in 2021. On February 9th, Biden spoke with Saudi King Salman, but not since. According to the journal, a call with the Sheikh Mohammed has to be rescheduled as well. This happens as both countries are not happy at US involvement in the Persian Gulf. The White House is of course denying this slap on the face. This is how Psaki is denying the fact.
Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman declined a request to speak with President Biden recently. Early in his term, the White House said the president would conduct diplomacy with the Saudis through the king rather than through MBS. Why has that policy changed?
That report is inaccurate, so let me start there. The president did speak with the Saudi king just a few weeks ago, several weeks ago. It's all running together at this point in time. There were no rebuff calls, period.
But this is obviously another straight-faced lie caught on camera. Do you still remember the scandal of Khashoggi murder? Once, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's ubiquitous, never-ending publicity tour to promote his plan to modernize his father's kingdom was stopped by the scandal of murder of Wall Street Journal columnist Khashoggi. Even though Saudi Arab's own prosecutor found that it has been conducted by some of the Crown Prince's closest aides, the CIA concluded that he had ordered Khashoggi's murder. In the Western media, MBS have already developed a reputation for ruthlessness. In 2017, he rounded up hundreds of members of his own family and other wealthy Saudis and imprisoned them in Ritz-Carlton Hotel on informal charges of corruption. The Khashoggi murder on the West media is trying to fix a view of Crown Prince as a brutish, thin-skinned, and psychopathic. Among those who share a dark appreciation of MBS is President Joe Biden, who has so far refused to speak with him. Many in Washington and other Western capitals hope his rise to the throne might still be averted. So, okay, you think he's evil and ruthless, and the Western media is all about defame him and even refuse to call him. And now your oil imports have some issues and need help, and you start calling him? I guess this is not how diplomacy is working in other parts of the world. Maybe this is the American way, but does the US government have any consistency at all? I guess this is the same reason why Joe is calling Iran and Venezuela the decades-long enemies of US. When US interest is at jeopardy, let's throw the so-called Western value out of the window. Another interesting instance happens in Europe. President Biden said a week ago that French President Macron didn't take his call to congratulate the French leader on his election night victory. Mr. Biden said he spoke with Mr. Macron's staff when he tries to reach the French president Sunday night, and he'll try again Monday. Quote, I feel good about the French election. I tried to talk to him last night. I spoke with his staff, and he was at the Eiffel Tower having a good time. And I'm going to talk to him today, unquote. Ms. Biden told reporters after returning to Washington from a weekend trip in Delaware. Anybody with some common sense would understand White House staffers usually arrange phone calls with foreign leaders to avoid embarrassing situations where the head of another country isn't available to take their call. So nobody would be naive enough to take poor Joe's explanation. I think Macron has quite a few good reasons to refuse Joe's phone call. Just last year, Australia bailed on a submarine contract with France worth $66 billion, choosing instead to work with the United States and the United Kingdom. France, Macron especially, was outraged. He recalled its ambassadors to the US and Australia. The Australian Navy's 6 Collins-class submarines are set to reach the end of their service life in 2036. And in 2016, France was chosen over Germany and Japan to help Australia replace its old subs with 12 new diesel-electric submarines. Australia suddenly announced last year it would join the US and the UK in the Trilateral Security Partnership, AUKUS, in the target of China. So they turned to the nuclear submarines instead. Yes, but aren't the basic principles of Western free market is to respect the contract? Now we see how easily Western countries can also break their contract. The next reason is the Ukraine war. As I have explained in my other video, why the US is the biggest winner so far for this war. The refugee crisis and fuel shortages have already created inflation and a collapse of euro. France is very likely to seek more independence policy in the Ukraine war. Another sign happens in Southeast Asia. As early as March 1st this year, the White House has announced that President Joe Biden will host the leaders of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, aka ASEAN, most likely minus Myanmar, at a special summit in Washington, D.C., sometime later March. Later in a statement, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki confirmed that the summit was scheduled for March 28th to 29th, and it was viewed by Biden's team as a way to demonstrating the U.S. commitment to the region on the 45th anniversary of U.S. ASEAN relations. But later on, it seemed that only Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong accepted the invitation and went to D.C. And the White House announced that the special summit, which would have seen 9 of the ASEAN's 10 leaders travel to Washington, was postponed indefinitely due to scheduled clashes. According to the website, China has taken advantage to advance its own diplomacy with those Southeast Asian partners. Chinese Foreign Ministry announced that the foreign ministers of Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, as well as the envoy from Myanmar's junta, will visit China respectively from March 31st to April 3rd at the invitation of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Not sure if the scheduling conflict is by intention, but those South Asian countries chosen to go to China to hold summit instead of go to the US, it is very obvious who has bigger influence in the Southeast Asian region. It's easy to see this from who is their top trading partner is. I don't have to look it up. If China is the second, nobody would be the first. What they can do in DC except paying lip services? Besides, who cares the war in Ukraine? The top priority for those Southeast Asian states are the domestic economic development. And even the dumbest person can see the intent of US is to stop the trade and economic growth in the Southeast Asia with China, instead of fostering or improving it. As a global leader, US is hurting the core value of its allies around the world, in the Europe and the Middle East and in the Southeast Asia. Along with it is the sure trend of dwindling influence. It's harder and harder to find people from other countries to fight for the interest of US. Tough times, nobody is easy. Of course, a president that can shake hands with air doesn't help that at all. I hope American people, including me and government, start to get used to the new status for the US and focus on the domestic issues, the homelessness, the drug issues, the open borders, the violence in the cities. Political correctness does not help US economy. It does not help the poor or the global influence. Only hard work and a kind heart will win you a better life and more friends.